So the other day made a video where I took down Carapac for my first turn on this account. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to document my progress in PVMing on this account, right, and see that journey through from the start to the finish. And Carapac was a boss that, at least to me, represents the beginning of endgame PVMing in RuneScape 3, especially right now, with the current state of how many bosses there are in the game and where Carapac fits in. So this was a kill that I took knowing that I didn't necessarily have the best in slot gear, and because of that it was more difficult than I had anticipated. And another reason why I'm making this video is to demonstrate to people that you don't necessarily need the best in slot gear to do endgame PVMing, right? One thing that, from playing RuneScape for a really long time now, that I've noticed is that a lot of players associate endgame equipment with power, right? The power doesn't come from the equipment. The power comes from you playing the game, and understanding how each mechanic works and how to properly kill the boss. That's where the power comes from. And because of that, I have experience, right? Players who struggle with PVMing. I remember a time where I was in a clan and someone was trying to get the stone of the Blackstone quest done. Pretty much the Elite Legends 1, 2, and 3 run that you needed to do, and they were struggling really. They were struggling with this, and they were not looking forward to doing it, right? And I told them, hey, this isn't that difficult to do, and all you need to do is remember your fundamentals, right? Remember the fundamental boss mechanics and do them. And then after talking to that guy for a little bit of time, he eventually got it done an hour later. And this is something that is really common within RuneScape that I see, which is a lot of players think that the game is more difficult than it actually is. Players look at endgame PVM setups, they see a bunch of action bars loaded up, they see ability books, see cursors, they see all these things loaded up from the UI elements, and it becomes really challenging to get into because you can't necessarily understand what's going on. So part of this video is to review my first, this was my first attempt, and to also demonstrate that you don't necessarily need the best in slot gear at all to take part in RuneScape 3 PVM. So, from my experience of doing Carapac, now that I've got my first kill, I would describe Carapac as a boss that requires you to both know how to DPS and do damage, but also know how to use defensive abilities correctly and tank. And if you don't necessarily understand these two things, you will have a difficult time doing this. And generally, I guess like a meta way of preparing for this boss would be you would use Ganodermic with I need to animate dead, right? I didn't use that at all, and I used subjugation. You shouldn't use this at all. And the reason you shouldn't do this is because this is a DPS set that doesn't necessarily give that much damage reduction bonus. So you're naturally going to take a lot of damage, and especially when you get into the final phase, you're going to need that damage reduction more than you realize it. The reason I'm doing this is because, one, I was grinding subjugation pieces and I have a lot of them right now, and two, to demonstrate that even if you use the most expensive armor, it's not necessarily the best armor to use in every situation, right? Because context matters. The general rule I follow is that if you want to do a safe kill and consistent kill, you go with tank armor over DPS armor. And if you want to do more damage and you want to push for PBs, you use DPS armor. That's the general rule, and that generally comes with experience and time. So that's why I'm using DPS armor, because I did have a main account before that I did kill Carapac for a long period of time, and I felt confident doing this in a lower budget setup. With that being said, it was still very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend anyone do this unless you're doing a challenge mode. Also, what I used was a Blood Fury and a Vampirism aura. So in the actual kill that is uploaded on my channel, I use a Dark Magic instead, and I still use the Blood Fury. Going into the kill, going into this first attempt, I thought I would need a lot more healing than I generally did use. And because of that, I dropped the Vampirism aura, going into the final kill, right? But the Blood Fury was definitely useful. And the Aura, the Elements, the Scrimshaw of Elements was also useful. What else is important to note is that I do not have Sunshine unlocked, so I'm using Metamorphosis instead. And I'm using standard prayer books, right? I'm using standard prayers. This overall means that even though I have, let's say, like overloads, I'm still relatively weak, right? I don't have endgame setup. I don't have an endgame setup. I don't have all these luxury items, right? But I can still take down the boss. And because of this, I've come to the conclusion that you don't need a lot of these things just to take part in PVM in. So now I'm going to go over the kill. Now this is the original kill, my first attempt at the kill, and you can see after the cutscene, I haven't killed the boss. And this wasn't necessarily a good attempt, right? There was a lot of mistakes in this kill that I will go over. So Kerapak has 4 phases, right? So the phase 1, where you have to avoid the time stun ability. Phase 2 with the wall of lightning. No, it was phase 2 with the ground slam, and then phase 3 with the wall of lightning, and then phase 4 at the end, where you have to just DPS him down. What I found really important from doing this kill is do the mechanics. Pay attention to the mechanics rather than just constantly trying to do damage or getting frustrated because you can't do damage or you're taking too much damage, right? In this kill, what you notice right now is I will misplay my surge ability a lot. And because of that, it throws off my timing completely and what I need to do. This was my kill after a really long time of not doing the boss. And I forgot that when you get stunned, your cooldowns on your surge and mobility abilities get put on cooldown. You don't get the refresh. And because of that, halfway through the kill, it gets awkward. I kind of panic on what I need to do. What I realize is I just stay calm. Right? When you stay calm, you realize that you can still carry on with the boss kill. And this is something that I do a lot in this kill. And this is something that I think is important when you do Kerapak overall. I also think what is also important is using your defensive abilities. Right? When you go through the PVM journey, or like what RuneScape PVM journey begins with, which is a lot of God of War Dungeon 1 into God of War Dungeon 2, right? Mainly God of War Dungeon 1, and everything that's pre-evolutionary combat is like the early game of PVM in. That's how I would describe it. And a lot of those encounters are just DPS checks. And again, you see, I misplay my surge ability. But a lot of those encounters are just DPS checks. All you're doing is DPS. So going from that, which is effectively what Jagex thinks is acceptable as a part of a PVM journey, to this is an insane jump up in skill. And because of that, you need to use your defensive abilities correctly. I do have them, right? I do have them here and here, right? But I don't use them correctly. And because of that, I do end up taking damage a lot going into, I think, phase 3 and phase 4. This is something where you need to get used to using these abilities more than you otherwise would do. Because in the early game, you're not using them. And then when you get to a situation like this, like my first Kerapak kill, you kind of forget to use them. Or you kind of forget the importance of them because you can just run through everything without necessarily using them properly. And you get away with them, even when you do use them, you get away with not using them properly. So this is one of those situations where using them definitely did help, and I will bring this up when that comes. But one thing that's also important to note is that I have vulnerability bombs right here. I don't use them. Like, this was my first attempt, and I don't use vulnerability bombs that often because I'm still getting used to using them. If this was an Iron Man setup, I can understand you might not have vulnerability bombs and this wouldn't be a low-level setup. Instead, I'll just switch out for a Gothic staff spec. That should be a good substitute for the vulnerability bombs. But one thing I am doing in this kill that is a mistake, which is I'm constantly panic eating. I'm constantly going shark brew, right? And because of that, I'm losing adrenaline and I'm losing DPS because of it. This is something that you want to avoid, and this comes back to just doing the mechanics. Make sure you're aware of what's going to happen in the boss fight. And when you do that, what you realize is that, wait, I don't need to use that much food. And if you see in the final kill, I used significantly less food throughout phase 1 to 3, and in phase 4, I'm using up all my food and trying to tank and survive as long as I possibly can to get that kill down. There is an order in which you need to do this, and I think... No, it's not in this clip. But again, at this point, I'm stunned and I just tally out, right? It's not in this clip, but what you can tell, there is a lot that I can improve on from this clip. And going forward from this clip, I switch out my aura because I don't need vampirism right now. Vampirism isn't helping me at all. It's not helping me pass the DPS check. It's not helping me sustain. The Blood Fury is good, but the vampirism isn't. So I don't need that. I don't need this at all. Instead, what you see in the actual kill is I use a Water Lotus, and I use that with sharks and blue blubbers, right? Blue blubbers. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine to use blue blubbers and shark because again, it all comes back to that phase, that final phase where you need to tank. And I will bring that clip up. So this is the final kill. This is the one where this is the final attempt where I got the kill down, and we can quickly go through this, right? So what I am doing here is what I failed to do on the first attempt, which was I managed my surge abilities and got them nailed down perfectly. This cut down on the amount of food I used, and again, this goes back to doing the mechanic, right? If you do the mechanic and you pay attention to the mechanic, you would do more. You'll do more DPS and you'll take less damage. And because of this, I was able to get this kill down. And again, I'm also using my vulnerability right stacks. Right there, if you can see. This is something that if you go back to that first clip I showed you, I wasn't using the vulnerability in time, and I was losing out on DPS. What else I was using was I was using my ultimates more consistently, and picking and choosing when I wanted to use them. This is something that I didn't necessarily do properly because I didn't necessarily remember the kill, and even then, right, just go back. If you go back to that first clip, I didn't use my scrimshaw, and again, it's taken me all this time to not use scrimshaw. This is just a bad habit. But again, you can still see from, even if you don't do everything perfectly, even if you mess up, you can still get through the kill as long as you stay calm and you do the mechanics. Right. So, again, I'm on phase 1 and I have significantly more food left, and I'm pretty safe in this kill. Again, this isn't that difficult once you get the boss mechanics down. And to do that, you need to try and make attempts, which is where I think a lot of players go wrong. Right? They feel like because they have a lot of endgame gear, they feel powerful and they feel like the boss should just roll over. It's not that game anymore, unfortunately for them. And because of that, you need to use the mechanics and understand everything and how to use them properly. And this is where I'm using the Tom Warp ability. Again, I still need to get used to this. I'm not necessarily really good with this ability, but this is the final kill attempt where I do use it. I do get more comfortable using it. And it really does help. It really helps save food. Because if you can manage your HP a lot, then you can just time warp and get back full HP and do that over and over again. And again, this is something that, well, I'm constantly avoiding the ground slam attack, and I'm using Protect Mage because I'm surging, and I'm successfully successfully timing the attacks. I don't need to pray melee. That means I don't have to necessarily worry about that particular switch. This is something that where players might struggle with if you're not used to it. You might think, oh yeah, I need to do the switch. You don't need to do the switch, right? And again, if you surge through the walls, then you can just get through them. So hopefully, let's see where. Let's go back to phase 4, right? So phase 4. Look, I'm on phase 4, and look at all this. I have all this food, and I'm perfectly safe. This is what you want when you go into phase 4 and you're doing Carapac for the first time. Mainly because as Carapac starts ramping up with his stacks, he will do more and more damage, and it will be really increasingly difficult to get through that. If you do not have Amulet of Souls, if you do not have Devoted or Enhanced Devoted, you can easily fail this kill in normal mode. So let's carry on with the clip. And again, I'm starting off full HP, and what do? I use my defensives here. Actually, wait. I'll use a Time Warp, and then I go into Alt, and I'll just do as much damage as I possibly can. The reason I'm doing this is because I know I'm going to get back my HP, and I'm going to get back my Adrenaline. So this is going to go up again, and this is going to go back up because of the Time Warp, because of this. And because of that, even though I'm taking all this damage right now, see I'm back at full health. And then next I use Debilitate. So that reduces a lot of the damage that I'm taking, and then I just heal up, and then I use Devotion. And then I heal up, and then I just go through the boss, the kill. And then anytime I can do that damage, I do. Again, if you want to do a pixel perfect kill, you'd probably use Adren Pots, you'd probably use Poison, you'd probably use all these other things that can help you do the kill faster. And again, I got the kill, and this is the final attempt. So hopefully this was an informative video for anyone who's watching, anyone who's trying to get into RuneScape PVMing, because there's a lot to learn, and the only way to learn is by attempting. And if you want to watch this video, see what I did wrong, what I noticed, feel free. But overall, I think this is a really good attempt.